Okay.
All right.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, Sebastious Unichastis. Yay!
So just to be aware, this is I'm making a toast, and I'm doing it because I love Charlie, but I feel bad that I didn't do one for Katie. And the reason I didn't do one for Katie is because this is a stupid idea. Nobody does this. I hate to be a guest and say that, but who does this? Like, most people have a graduation party, they have some burgers, they have their friends over. Maybe at the Burnett house you get your underage friends drunk with my dad or whatever, something like that. But no, Epstein's have to have toast, so we're gonna have a toast. So I'm gonna make a toast, but I feel bad for Katie because I didn't make one for her. But Charlie was pushing me into it, and I felt like this is gonna happen. So, and you all know that most people are afraid to go to the dentist, right? You know what they're more scared of? Public speaking. So this is a big deal. This is a very big deal. If only there were some club that I could go to that would help with that. So I have to write things down. So I wrote a few things down. And I hate to just read it, but here we go. What a magical evening. It takes a special event like this to bring us all together. I remember when Barry and Chris first met. And now they're getting married. No, wait, that's not right. I have the right one. Okay, rewind. What a magical evening. It takes a special event like this, blah, 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 get us together. I've known Barry since 1977, and now he's turning 50. He's 50, he can kick, he can stretch, and he can kick. He's 50. No, that's shit. I have it here someplace. Okay, Charlie, this has your name on it.
Okay.
Okay, so this is the one for Charlie. You see how I'm making a point, like this is sort of expected to be, if you're going to be around Epstein's, you sort of have to make toast. So here's yours, Charlie. This is going to be divided into two sections. One is going to be story time, and the next part will be, you just wait. And the next will be some advice. And I have some advice that I have had over the years from mentors, people I've worked with, and some of it, the theme of the advice is maybe medicine that was hard to swallow at the time, but things that I think about throughout my life. So, but the stories, my first story is when I met Charlie. Do you remember when we met?
No, I was probably...
You were a tiny little baby, so he was like tiny. And I remember meeting him, and he's like, oh, okay, they've done too. You were a very cute baby. The next story comes to, you were at the potty training stage, and we're out, I want to say getting sushi, but I think
we were at Kelly's.
everybody argues with, I don't think that's right, but anyway, so you were sort of in the middle of like, I don't know, you probably 4, 9, I don't know, 3. And so Chris and Barry are like, yes, Charlie wants to sit on your lap. Yeah, so like, come over, sit on Uncle Sebastian's lap. So we're sitting, and we're just chilling, whatever. And then I'm like, it's getting warm. It's getting warmer. And I'm like, this isn't happening. I'm like, Charlie, did you pee on me? And he's like, yeah, I did. I'm like, okay, go back to mommy. And like that. So that was fun. Fast forward. And then Charlie, we were at Laguna last year, Laguna Beach. And, I love the beach, don't get me wrong, but there's only so much beach time I can take. And I was like, we got to go work out. At some point, we got to work out. So I found a gym, and I'm like, I should probably ask Charlie. So Charlie and I we go to this gym, and we work out. And by the way, we saw Dr. Drew there. I want to say Dr. Dre, but we saw Dr. Drew working, but we left him alone. You didn't know who it was, but you Googled him.
No, I didn't know, but I believe you.
We worked out, and so it was a little tricky, and like I wanted to invite Charlie, but I knew what was going to happen because Charlie's going to be like way stronger than me, and I have to prepare myself for that. Like, he's super strong, like he knows his way around the gym. But Charlie's one of these guys, so we're like working out, and he's like, well, you got one more rep, bro, one more rep, like you got this, bro. And I'm like, Charlie, the gays don't do that. Like, you don't need to do that. Like, you do your thing, I'll do my thing. He's like, okay. But he was a good workout buddy. So that was our story time. I will say, just honestly, Charlie's easy to be around. He's like a fun guy to talk to, and he's a good guy. All right, so the advice, I have some words of advice from people in my past. One of my very first jobs, I was working for an orthodontist. His name was Dr. McLeod. And I was making his models for his study models and case studies and things like that. And he was he was very picky. And he said something to me once, and he said, if you don't have time to do it right the first time, when are you going to have time to do it right? And I was like, what does that mean? Like, what? Are you saying my models aren't good? Like, do I have to fix something? And it just stuck with me. And I think about that a lot because it just, you know, if you're going to cut corners now, you're going to pay for it later. And that's just something that I just always, so that's a little bit word of wisdom for you. And I use that in my own job today. Like if I have a student that I'm having a hard time with, and it's like, okay, we better talk to her now, or him or whoever, fix it before it gets like worse. The second little word of wisdom that was a little hard to swallow actually came from Bob years ago. So there was a time in my life that I was maybe going through,
right?
Bob Epstein, your dad,
Bob
Popsy.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you remember this, but we met when I was going through maybe a little of a bad time, a transition period in careers or whatever. And so Barry, being the very proactive, good friend that he is, set me up with both Judy and Bob, and we talked about like various things. And I went through, and I want to say it was a personality test, but you're going to get mad. It wasn't, but it was a bunch of questions. I don't know if you remember. It was a profile. And do you remember this?
It's an assessment,
Not yet. It was in the bank building on San Mateo.
Preview.
It was something. It was a big long. So it was just basically he was trying to help me like figure out like what's your next step, what are you good at, things like that. But Bob said something to me that was he said, you know, the world doesn't owe you a living. I don't know if you remember that, but and I was thinking about that at the time. I was like, that is very unhelpful. Like, what does that mean? But that has stuck with me, and I was like, you know, the world, I hate to say it, but it doesn't owe you a living. You have to like make things happen. And so that's something that has motivated me. And then the last one, I may be making things up here and there at the academy. When we were seniors, we used to have these senior assemblies. Maybe it was all assemblies, but on Fridays were a big deal at it. Friday Forum.
Yeah, Friday 4.
Fridays were big at academy. You had donuts, like it was a big donut day, which is close to my heart. But I want to say it was Jim Fix, and I'm going to say it's Jim Fix just because he was famous, and if you don't know who that is, he's a famous runner, died of a heart attack, but it was a big deal. But I don't know if it was him, but we'll say it was Jim Fix. And they were saying to the effect that, you know, you've been blessed with this very great education, and it was sort of hinting that you guys are very privileged kids, and you need to do something with it. Like you have an obligation to the world and an obligation to society to do something with what you've been given. And I remember getting a little pissy at that point and thinking, you know, my parents worked very hard to send me here. This is expensive. I'm working my ass off. And here you are making me feel guilty, like now I have to like do something good for the world or whatever. And now I think back on that as that's a good point. So Charlie, you have been granted like, you've got great parents, you've gone to great schools, you know, make a difference. And you will. I'm not worried about Charlie. So my final thoughts, Charlie, I know you're going to be great. I know you're going to be successful at whatever you do. You've already passed the big test because you've already left home, which is a big deal. When I was your age, the thought of going away to school was terrifying. And Barry and I were in common that we were both kind of mama's boys, and leaving home was a big deal. You've already done that. And I'm sure you had your hard moments or whatever, but that's like you've already passed that big hurdle. I had some other things that I was going to say. I think my last story about Charlie will be, because I know he's going to be fine. Oh, I had a couple added thoughts. Charlie, he does have his moments. Let's not say he's perfect. He does have some hair moments that I'm worried about, like what's going on. But then I was like, well, people are looking at me now. This is a transition phase right now, so, you know. I mean, is Charlie on his phone a little bit too much? Obviously, yes. I think we all know that. But he's going to be very great at whatever he does. And the last thing I want to part with, because I know Charlie will be successful, and I know he goes the extra mile. When you were a counselor at Academy years ago and you had your final day, not only did you bring donuts for the class, that's a big deal to me, but he brought custom donuts to each student. Like he figured out what they want, and they each got that. And I don't know, like who does that? So Charlie does that. So he goes the extra mile. So you will be successful. So here's to Charlie.
I forgot about that.
I remember that because, you know, donuts.
Is that so hard?